When I agreed to teach Norn the basics of swordsmanship, I thought the hardest part would be pacing her stamina so she wouldn't get hurt. I definitely didn't expect to discover a secret fan club watching her every move from the shadows, or that I'd somehow end up as their supreme lawgiver. Welcome back to AI Anime and Manga. If you're enjoying our journey through this world, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to help support the project. And as always, a huge thank you to our YouTube members for your support and for catching these episodes early. Now let's head back to the start of the month, before things got quite so complicated. Chapter 3, Training with Norn. Another month had passed. It was still cold out, but the snow was starting to melt, and patches of ground were starting to show through here and there. One morning, I got out of bed as silently as possible, trying not to wake Sylphie. She liked to use my arm as a pillow, so slipping free took some finesse. In a side room, I changed into my training wear, a lined outfit that looked a bit like a sweatsuit. Sylphie had picked it out for me. It was a little light for winter, but when you were exercising, that was just about right. Once I was dressed, I picked up the stone sword I had left in the corner. It was thick and crude looking. I had made it myself with earth magic. There was no real edge on the blade, but it was unusually heavy, which made it useful for practicing with the strength of my new artificial left hand. I was actually starting to get attached to the thing. Maybe I would give it a name one of these days, something like tuna or swordfish. Come to think of it, I had not eaten anything like sashimi since arriving in this world. Did nobody here eat fish raw? For a moment, I had no answer. Once I was ready, I gently patted my sleeping wife on the head, silently mouthing, "See you later." Her eyes still closed, Sylphie smiled happily and rubbed her head against my hand. I guess she was half awake. It was adorable, needless to say. The covers had gotten tangled while she slept. I tugged them back into place and reminded myself that Sylphie was already a mother. We had been getting back to our normal nighttime routine lately, but it felt a little early to be trying too hard for a second child, so I was trying to be restrained, even if there was no guarantee either way. As I left the room, Sylphie called out sleepily.
See you later.
Be back soon, I thought. Next, I headed to Norn's room. These days, she had been joining me for morning training. When she stayed at the house, we trained in the yard. When she stayed at the dorm, I met her in the courtyard there. Today was one of her days at home.
You ready, Norn?
I knocked at the door, then started opening it. Norn yelped, half cut off by surprise.
Whoops. Pardon me.
She was still getting dressed, so I promptly closed the door again. My little sisters did not stir that sort of feeling in me, and that was for the best. It meant I could be affectionate with them without feeling dirty about it. Still, the thought that Norn would probably get married someday put a vaguely uneasy feeling in my stomach. Maybe this was how a father felt watching his daughter grow up. It was not so bad. I would have to take Paul's place and berate her first boyfriend for her. I am not giving Norn to a bum like you. Get lost. Norn emerged from her room in her exercise clothes, carrying a wooden sword in one hand. Irritated, she asked what the point of knocking was if I did not wait for her to answer. Her outfit was plain and functional, with long sleeves on the top and bottom. It was standard exercise gear from the university. I had bought her a couple of pairs from the school store. Glancing past Norn into her room, I saw Paul's sword mounted high on the wall. In my old world, she probably would have set up an altar with a picture of his face, but there were no cameras here. Without photographs, people tended to use mementos to remember those they had lost.
Norn, would you mind if I came into your room for a second?
Norn hesitated, then said that was fine. I stepped inside. The room had that morning stillness bedrooms do when someone has just woken up. Standing in front of Paul's sword, I put my hands together.
Dad, Norn and I are going to be training again this morning. Keep an eye on us so we don't get hurt too badly, will you?
Once I finished my little prayer, I bowed my head. How would Paul have responded to this? Maybe he'll never improve without a few injuries, you know? Or maybe just, you better not let Norn get hurt, damn it. Glancing over, I found Norn kneeling next to me with her hands together in the Millie's style. For a moment, there was nothing more to say. It did not matter what Paul would have said, really. He was not here anymore. I had to play his role now. I had a responsibility to take care of Norn to the best of my ability. She did not have anyone else to turn to after all.
Okay then. Want to get going?
Norn answered that she was ready, and the two of us headed out to begin another session. The regimen was simple enough: calisthenics, running, and practice swings. I called this sword training, but at the moment we were really just working on fundamentals. Over the last few months, I had been driving Norn hard to build her basic stamina. When I say hard, I do not mean I had her doing the same routine as me. That would have been way too much for her. I had started her at 1/5 of my own training regimen. Norn was only 11, and she had not been very physically active before this, so there was only so much I could reasonably expect her to endure. While she did practice swings in the yard, I finished my own upper body exercises. Norn counted through her swings. 25, 26. Swinging a sword at nothing in particular is simple enough, but that is part of the reason it takes real willpower to keep going. Norn never quit halfway. I was proud of her for that. She was tougher than she looked. At last, she reached 50.
Okay, that's good. Nice work.
Panting, Norn thanked me.
Let's wash ourselves off and head back then.
After training, the two of us headed into the bath together. Norn had an unfortunate tendency to trip during our running sessions, which sometimes left scrapes or bruises on her knees. I made a habit of looking her over and cleaning them up with healing magic afterward, sort of like kissing it to make it better, except it actually worked. Norn strongly objected to letting me see her naked, so she bathed in underwear and a thin shirt. I guess she was getting to that sensitive age. Of course, I always wore underwear too to make her more comfortable. I kept my more juvenile thoughts to myself. I did not want Norn to banish me from bathing with her entirely. The big brother had to maintain his dignity. As I reflected on this, Norn shot me a look and pouted. She said it had just been running and practice swings again, and asked when I was going to teach her how to use her sword.
I already am.
Norn said she did not mean just swinging it, she meant stances and techniques. So far, I had been instructing Norn on how to run and swing her sword. Running would build her stamina, and practice swings would build her strength. Until she had worked on both of those for a while, there was no point in learning techniques. That was how I had figured it, at least.
Let's see.
The girl had been at it for months now. She had probably made some progress. I gave Norn a looking over. She had the slender body of a growing kid, but compared to when we started, the muscles in her arms and legs were a little more defined. It was hard to say she was in shape, but a little exertion probably was not going to injure her. Maybe it was time I taught her the most basic stances.
I guess you're right. We'll get started for real after school today, okay?
Norn brightened and agreed. Once we had rinsed off our sweat, the two of us left the bathroom together. That evening, the real lesson began. I met Norn at the University of Magic's third external training field, an exercise ground near the edge of campus. I had already changed into my training wear. My sister was in her exercise gear as well, wooden sword in hand. Her face was deadly serious. We did not have the area to ourselves. A few robed students were training nearby, and others looked to be out for a walk. We had also attracted spectators who were clearly curious about why we were wearing training clothes at this hour. It did not matter if we had a crowd.
Norn, we're going to start your real training as a swordswoman today.
Norn answered, sharp and energetic like a soldier receiving orders. Her face shone with energy and enthusiasm. It was obvious how eager she was to learn real techniques. It had only been a few months since we started, but the repetitive nature of basic training had probably been wearing her down. Still, swinging a sword in battle was not a game. You had to get the fundamentals down first.
Just so you know, I'm planning to be tough on you.
Norn nodded seriously.
If we keep at it, you might end up getting upset with me. You might even start thinking I hate you. That's how harsh I'm going to be.
Norn accepted that too.
To be honest, I don't want to make you hate me, but a half-hearted instructor gets his students hurt. If I took it easy on you in training and then you ended up getting killed in your first real fight, I'd never be able to face our dad in heaven.
Norn had no real talent with the sword, certainly not compared to Eris at the same age. I would not say she was worse than the average 11-year-old, but strength could only be measured in relative terms. When you fought someone one-on-one, the stronger combatant won and the weaker one died. Losing was not a valid option. For Norn to become capable of overcoming an actual threat, she would need to put in a lot of effort. I needed to train her hard, and she needed to learn a few tricks too.
At some point, this might start making you miserable. You might get frustrated with your lack of progress. You might see someone with more talent quickly pass you by. There will come a day when you feel like quitting.
Norn said nothing.
I do know how that feels, for the record, and I couldn't really blame you or anyone else for giving up in the face of adversity.
Norn scowled a little at that. Not surprising, really. From her perspective, it probably looked like I was supremely talented at anything I tried, and in this body I really was capable at all sorts of things. Even so, I had lost many battles. More than once I had nearly died. In a sense, Paul had died because I was not strong enough. I wanted more than anything to keep Norn safe from that kind of danger.
That said, I don't want you to give up on the sword no matter what. If you do, I'll never teach it to you again, and I'll never let you use Dad's sword.
Norn stayed quiet.
As long as you keep at it, though, I won't give up on you either.
Kind of a cheesy speech, I know. Was I even showing that kind of determination myself? Well, I had given up on getting much better with the sword, but I had kept up with my training every morning. I wanted to believe I was not a total hypocrite.
Do you understand, Norn?
Norn answered quickly and forcefully, saying she understood completely. She was looking up at me with flushed cheeks and determination in her eyes. I found myself wondering if I had looked something like this to Paul when I was little. Maybe Norn would end up following a similar path, leaving me behind and finding some other master to train her. Once I got her up to the beginner level, I could always send for Ghislaine or something, assuming I found out where she was. There was also the Sword Sanctum out west. If I offered enough money, maybe I could lure a sword saint away to teach her for a while.
Glad to hear it. We'll start off with some running then.
Norn was startled. She asked if they were not training with the sword tonight.
Yeah, of course. You're running with your sword in your hands this time. You have to carry it around everywhere on the battlefield, after all.
Norn went quiet.
I'm waiting for a reply.
Norn snapped back with a loud yes, sir. Today our regimen would consist of running, a review of the 3 basic forms, and a brief sparring session. My intention was to give her a very hard time. She needed to understand this could be painful and scary. I did not think pain was essential to learning, but I felt it was best for her to realize up front how tough this could be. There was a chance I would make her cry. There was a chance she would hate my guts after tonight. Even so, I needed to turn my heart to stone. Swordplay was not something you pursued as a fun hobby. That was a surefire way to end up dead the first time you faced an actual threat.
All right, Norn. Follow me.
Norn answered, and I set off running, still anxious despite myself. By sunset, the first real training session had run its course.
Okay, that's good enough for today.
Norn thanked me through ragged breaths. As the setting sun shone down on us, Norn collapsed to the ground, gasping for air.
I want you to practice the 3 basic forms I taught you today when you have the time. In the morning, at lunchtime, whenever, even when I'm not around.
Norn answered that she would. For our first real training session, it had gone decently. Once the running was over, I had launched directly into reviewing the basic forms. After that, I threw her right into a sparring match against me using wooden swords. I corrected her stance and foot movements as we went. It was probably not as complex as the training you would get from a kendo instructor back in Japan, but this world did not have many formal rules for its swordsmen to learn. Really, when you got down to it, learning how to fight with a sword was mostly about getting in a lot of practice. Paul had started smacking me around fairly early in our sessions, and Ghislaine had spent a great deal of time sparring with Iris too. I felt like I had the right general idea. Norn seemed very reluctant to actually swing at someone with a wooden sword, so I started by letting her swing at me freely. I did not defend myself, apart from shifting my body so she did not hurt me too much. She grimaced every time her sword struck home, but I tried hard to keep a calm, composed look on my face. I wanted her to believe I could take her blows just fine. I think it worked. Probably. Since she had spent months doing practice swings, her strikes had a decent amount of force behind them. I would probably have some nasty bruises. After that, we got to actual sparring. I struck Norn with my sword for a while, then called an end to the session. I took it easy on her, of course, but her arms and legs would definitely bruise before too long. In other words, I had hurt my sweet little sister. Part of me already wondered if I had made the right choice. Still, Norn kept swinging back to the bitter end. She did not surrender or complain, much less break down in tears. As long as she had this level of motivation, basically any kind of training would be productive.
What do you think, Norn? That hurt, didn't it?
Norn quietly admitted that it had.
Was it too much to take? Do you want to quit?
Norn said she wanted to train tomorrow too.
All right.
To be honest, I was not too confident in my own ability as a teacher. But if magic was comparable to an academic subject, swordsmanship was more like a sport. There was not one correct answer, and if you wanted to improve, you had to keep at it.
Come here, Norn. I'll heal you up.
I intended to sit Norn down and use my magic to ease her pain. If she had bruises under her clothes, I would have to ask Sylphie to take care of those later. I approached my sister and took off her jacket to get a better look at her arms. Then I sensed that we were being watched. Turning around, I saw a group of male students staring at us, illuminated by the setting sun. How long had those guys been there? From the start, maybe? I had assumed they were curious onlookers, but if they had stuck around this long, they probably had a reason. Maybe they wanted something from me.
Norn, get dressed and wait for me, okay? I'll walk home with you today.
Norn agreed, a little uncertain. I cast a few quick healing spells on Norn, then bustled her off toward the changing room. Once she was safely inside, I headed over to the group of boys. As I got closer, I realized there were more than 10 of them. None of them looked like the popular kind of kid. That was good. Maybe we could understand each other. They were staring at me with open hostility, though. When I stared right back, a few looked away awkwardly. At this point, I was a normie with 2 wives and a kid. But that did not mean I felt scorn for these guys. I had not been much different from them in my previous life, after all. Not that this stopped them from feeling intimidated.
Do you need something, guys?
They looked at each other, then started whispering and pushing one another forward. Eventually, one member of the group stepped up. The boy looked maybe 18. He was about as tall as me, but gangly and out of shape. His cheeks were bony and his eyes were shifty. The classic magician type, I guess. Put glasses on his head and he might look a little like Zenoba. Of course, Zenoba was always full of bizarre confidence. This guy looked more like the self-loathing, resentful type. The young mage glared at me and demanded to know why I was bullying Norn. Bullying? I felt my brow furrow at the word. The young mage flinched at my reaction, but continued. He said he knew Norn was clumsy and messed things up sometimes. Maybe, he said, she had accidentally angered me somehow. But she tried her best at everything, so did I really have to take it out on her like that? Behind him, the group muttered agreement. He went on saying Norn had never even held a sword before. She did not know how to defend herself. Whatever she had done, making her fight me was too harsh. The group concurred again, louder this time. From the sound of it, they believed I had forced a sword into Norn's hands, then beaten her up for my own enjoyment under the pretense of training. It was basically the opposite of the truth, but I could understand why they had reached that conclusion. I was not a very skilled instructor, for one thing. In any case, I needed to clear up the misunderstanding.
Well, you see.
The young mage cut in. He said he knew I was the strongest mage in the school, but if I was going to mistreat Norn, they would still fight me for her sake. The guy was really working up a head of steam. There was real determination in his voice. But the chorus of approval from his friends was much quieter this time. In fact, I heard someone in the back mutter that he did not think he had agreed to that. It was sad, but guys like us were not particularly tough in groups either. Right. Before I explained myself, there was one thing I needed to understand.
Okay. Can I ask who you people are exactly?
The young mage's voice cracked in surprise. He looked back to his friends for guidance, then turned to me again with an awkward face and asked what I meant.
I'm asking how you know my little sister. Are you her friends or something?
He stammered that they had just noticed her last year when she was a freshman. She always did her best at everything, so they were kind of rooting for her. Once he got those words out, his friends started chiming in as well. One said he had noticed her on campus 6 months ago. Another said he was in the same year as Norn. They had practical lessons together, and she kept messing up her fire spell over and over. Another said he saw her getting teary-eyed while an instructor scolded her during magic training, and they spoke clumsily and never seemed to finish their sentences. But I got the general idea. These guys had seen Norn in class and training. They had seen her tearing up as she failed repeatedly but kept struggling anyway, and it had warmed their hearts. At some point, they had banded together to offer her a little subtle support from the sidelines. In other words, Norn had a fan club. Come to think of it, Sylphie had mentioned something like this to me at some point. It was understandable. Norn was adorable after all. I could see where they were coming from. As Norn's brother, I wanted to encourage their efforts.
I think I understand the situation now. Thanks for looking out for Norn, everyone. I'm Rudeus Greyrat, her big brother.
When I lowered my head in gratitude, a surprised murmur ran through the little crowd. These guys were on Norn's side. Some might be capable of taking things too far, but as a group they seemed to have nothing but good intentions. It was only right to treat them with respect. That said, I still needed to clear up the misunderstanding.
As for our training session just now, I know it looked like I was treating her harshly. However, learning the sword isn't a game. It can be a matter of life and death.
I proceeded to explain the situation in detail. First, I explained that the whole thing was Norn's idea. Second, I told them it was dangerous to learn swordplay unless you took it very seriously. Finally, I emphasized that Norn needed to work much harder at it than most people would. The fan club was taken aback at first, but after a while they seemed to understand where I was coming from. Still, I heard someone mutter whether I really had to hit her that hard. It was a fair question. I was not sure my methods were correct either. All I wanted them to understand was that I was not picking on Norn maliciously. I continued my explanation at length, trying to convey my motivations. The faces of the fan club members slowly grew more serious as they listened, and by the end they were nodding reluctantly. These guys were still young, but by this world's standards they were adults. They could understand how deadly serious actual battle was. Norn returned just as we were reaching an understanding, asking if something was the matter. She was wearing something like a poncho over her school uniform. The moment she arrived, the fan club erupted. One boy called out her name. Another said hello and told her she looked cute, as always. Another praised her for doing a nice job out there. The instant my sister appeared, everyone in her fan club got remarkably creepy. Still, I could understand the feeling. She was adorable in that outfit. So adorable I pictured her carrying around a leaf umbrella. Norn flinched at the sudden barrage of encouragement, then politely thanked them and bowed. I noticed she was not getting too close. I guess she was picking up on the strange atmosphere too. Norn told me she thought she had forgotten something in her room and would go grab it. She asked me to wait for her at the school gates. Just like that, she turned and rushed toward the dorms. Before she got far, she tripped and fell. Norn was a little slow getting up. Once she was back on her feet, she looked back at me for just a moment. Her eyes were glistening. I suppressed a sigh. Maybe she should not be running right after exercising. Once we got home, I would have to give her a massage to help control the muscle pain. She would need a nice, long, relaxing bath, too. The fan club watched her go, murmuring about how adorable she was. One warned her not to run so fast in a skirt. Another admitted he finally understood the appeal of the school uniform. Then the comments started sliding into dangerous territory. One boy noted that she was a slow runner. Another said that if a kidnapper tried to snatch her, she might not get away. A third said that if Norn went on the slave market, he would buy her in a minute. Someone else started imagining living with her. For one ugly second, my own thoughts drifted into the same possessive current. If I bought Norn, I would take her home, feed her a big meal, and make sure she ate well. Yeah. Wait, no. Norn was my little sister. I was not going to let anyone buy her on the damn slave market. If someone dared to kidnap her, I would hunt them down and murder them painfully. Sound good, Dad? Do not get mad at me.
Ahem.
The fan club snapped out of their disturbing fantasies.
Guys, I need you to not talk about enslaving my little sister, thanks.
The boys apologized.
It's all right. I know she's adorable. You can have your little daydreams at least. As long as you keep a safe distance from her.
Everyone seemed to relax a little.
Yeah. But if you lay so much as a finger on her, you're going to seriously regret it.
They recoiled. It never hurt to be clear about these things. I did not think anyone here was capable of real mischief, and groups like this tended to moderate their members, but you never knew what someone might do on impulse. The last thing I needed was one of them getting overheated and trying to snatch Norn off the street.
On another note, what rules has your club agreed on so far?
They echoed the word club in confusion.
Yeah, this is Norn's fan club, right? What's your policy on interacting with her?
It was very important to have clear guidelines. Generally, fans agreed not to approach their idol directly, but I had heard of cases where people allowed handshakes or autographs. The handshake thing was dicey territory, though. Sometimes guys put weird stuff on their palms first, like gum or sea urchins. I wanted to make sure that sort of thing was officially forbidden. To my surprise, the guys did not understand what I was talking about. They did not even know what a fan club was.
Wait a second, guys. Who's the person in charge of this group?
They said they did not really have anyone in charge.
Seriously? I need you to explain in detail, please.
Strangely enough, the group had not been formed by anyone in particular. They had been drawn together naturally by their shared appreciation for Norn's cuteness. Many of them did not even know each other's names.
I see.
This was a very dangerous situation. What we had here was an unorganized mob of uncertain size, united only by interest in my little sister. In mobs, people were capable of doing things they would not have the nerve to try alone. For example, kidnapping my adorable little sister and blaming her for being too cute to resist. Unacceptable, outrageous, scandalous.
This isn't good, guys. At this rate, you're going to turn into a bunch of criminals.
They protested that they would never do anything like that.
Sorry, but I know I'm right about this. One of you is going to cross the line eventually.
Not surprisingly, this inspired a storm of denials. They said none of them would ever lay a hand on Norn. One insisted that yes, they liked Norn a lot, but it was more like she was their little sister or something. Say what, punk? She was my little sister and I was not sharing. Wait, stay on topic.
I believe you guys mean well, but I think we need to set some clear rules here.
When you wanted to keep a group from getting out of control, you had to establish basic regulations. Once rules were in place, members would start keeping an eye on each other. Once you gave people a set of rules, even rules as meaningless as wearing the same clothes and the same scarf while waiting to see an idol, people tended to follow them. Rules arise naturally with time. They come into existence when they are needed and fade when they are not. This fan club did not have much history yet. There had not been enough time for its rules to develop organically. But until they created some, Norn was in danger. I needed to speed up the process artificially. I was not going to wait around for them to hurt her first. Somebody had to make fundamental decisions right now. Fortunately, the issues were simple and clear. They just had to promise not to scare Norn or put her at risk. The problem was finding someone to propose those rules. It would usually be the leader, but these people did not have one. The guy who stepped forward to challenge me was probably the most strong-willed. Could I appoint him as boss and let him set the rules? Definitely not. The leader had to understand the responsibility they were taking on and accept it willingly. Randomly dropping power in someone's lap was never a good idea. Who understood the gravity of the situation best? Who cared most deeply about Norn's well-being? Me, obviously.
All right then.
Norn was my little sister too, my own flesh and blood. In other words, I was the lawgiver here. And so the story passed into campus legend. In the year 425 of the Armored Dragon era, a certain organization was founded in the Renoa University of Magic. Its name, the Norn Grey Rat Official Fan Club. This group, boasting some 30 members in total, would go on to leave an indelible mark on the history of the university. The name of its first president, however, is lost to history. Legends of the University number 3. The boss can summon 30 flunkies with a single word. Thanks for watching this episode from AI Anime and Manga. If you enjoyed Norn's first steps into sword training, leave a like, comment with the moment you want to see adapted next, and subscribe for the next chapter. Next time, life at the Grey Rat House gets stranger when a tiny sprout turns into a much bigger question. And thank you again to our YouTube members for helping make these episodes possible.